Well, hi guys, welcome to another AW interview. Got Rob Pope here, the real life Forrest Gump, if any of you don't know. Rob, firstly, before starting, have to talk about the beard. Did you just grow the beard because it was essentially the Forrest Gump look, essentially?
Yeah, exactly. Like sort of, I'm a bit of a rocker, so I'm not sort of averse to long hair or facial hair or anything like that. But at the time I sort of started the run, I had hair that was sort of probably similar length now, but I just had a little bit of stubble when I sort of hit American soil. But obviously I wasn't just doing a run, I was actually doing an undertaking. And the thing is, if you're going to do anything, right, you may as well do it to the best of your ability, or as faithfully as you can. So on the 15th of September 2017 16, I went into a barber shop in Mobile, Alabama, with a photo of Tom Hanks in the film, and said, "That please," which I now know is called a high and tight. And so, I got a high and tight and a cutthroat shave. And then I didn't shave for the best part of 18 months. And as you can probably see now, I've not really done much since.
What was their reaction when you went in there and said that you wanted to, not just to get the beard, but to kind of, you are going to be doing the run that, Forrest did in the movie?
Yeah, like sort of I think they thought initially it was some sort of a hidden camera thing, sort of it was a pretty busy shop, and like sort of when I just walked in, obviously sounding a lot different from everybody in there, sort of I think they were pretty justified in thinking it was a stunt. And so, to be honest, like when I said what I was doing, it was no more unbelievable that I was about to get like a marine buzz cut and a shave, And so, did I believe that the whole thing was going to happen? Maybe not, but you have to start somewhere, and that was with a haircut.
I mean, it's an amazing journey to get there. I mean, you did cross country and a bit of football at school, if I'm right. And then 2002 was the big kind of change in your life. Your mum passed away from cancer after you did the London Marathon. And at that point, I guess the perspective of kind of those moments, got you into a stage where mentally you were thinking, right, I'm going to do something about my life, and I'm going to make my mum proud and actually create some kind of legacy for that. Was running a long distance? Was that always a legacy that you wanted to kind of produce, or?
Not necessarily, like sort of like I probably had thoughts about running long distances, but it wasn't necessarily going to be tied to anything. I sent a letter to a chap who wrote a book about running across America, asking for some advice, about sort of 10, 15 years before the run. And he said, obviously it's a huge undertaking, but as with so many things in life, it just sort of got put on the back burner, and like wanting to do something that would have made my mum proud, could have took a load of like sort of forms. Like I went back to uni and did a PhD, and thought that might have been the thing to make a difference. But, I just had a feeling that I could do something big. But it all happened by accident, really. It was a case of a lot of cards just falling in the right direction, sort of most notably after returning from Australia, where things had already gotten pretty interesting as it happened there.
Because the thing is, like when you went out to Australia, you ended up winning the marathon, if I'm right in saying out there. Was it?
Yeah, I came 10th in the Sydney Marathon in 2015. And because I've been in Australia for quite a few years, I was representing Victoria as a state. And when I went over the line, so I was informed by Tim Crosby, the head coach, that I was now Australian champion. And I was just like, well, Tim, you know I'm not Australian, right? And he says, well, you've been here long enough now, so that's good enough for us. And so it happened that later on that day, I was fielding a call from Athletics Australia, asking if I'd consider switching nationality to represent Australia in Rio, if basically the other people didn't get the qualifying times. And of course, I was definitely up for that, but unfortunately, I think 3 or 4 people ran faster than me and got the times and went to Rio. So I'm thinking about getting an Olympic ring tattoo where I basically just like finish it halfway through, 2.5 rings.
I was about to say, what did people in Liverpool say about, with the Scouse accent? What did they say about that going out to Australia? And kind of, being obviously from Liverpool, Australia's a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, like so. Well, everyone was pretty supportive when I went over there, but like as you can maybe tell, like my Scouse accent isn't exactly full Jamie Carragher. I went down to uni for I was there down south for like best part of 11 years and lived in Australia for just over 3. And so somebody referred to my accent on a podcast the other week as the maddest accent ever. And but to be fair, when I was in the States, most people thought I was Australian. That was the most common accent I'd get. Then Irish and Scottish. I think 2 people correctly guessed I was from Liverpool, but hardly anyone else would say, "Are you like English?" Well, one guy in Tennessee, I was buying some stuff for for my like evening dinner, and he said, "Man, I love Scotland, fish and chips and larder." I was just like, well, fair enough, mate. I don't think any of those things are particularly Scottish, but it didn't shatter his bubble.
Close enough, Liverpool. It's only about a 2-hour car journey, 3-hour car journey to Scotland.
Exactly.
You're close anyway. But going back to 2002, then, how big of an impact, your mum passing away from cancer? How big of an impact was that in terms of looking forward to maybe new adventures in your life, which you ended up doing in the end?
Yeah, it was massive because like sort of she brought me up on her own from when she was like sort of 6 months, and she was like sort of like a fierce warrior queen of a woman. Like we once went on Kilroy, the old chat show, where the main theme of the article was that single parent families are responsible for most of Britain's ills. And as a sort of I think I was 17 at the time, and I just sort of got the nod to say I was going to uni. I saw my mum tell like sort of the MP on the show like a new orifice for his views, and saying, my son's going to vet school, and single parent families can do anything. I just thought, wow, I always knew she had my back, but this was big. And like at this point, sort of, so she was healthy, but she ended up getting sort of mouth cancer. And she had a whole lower jaw removed and rebuilt with bone from a leg and muscle from a stomach. And she actually sort of beat it, and she was like sort of doing really well. And she actually went back to university, Liverpool John Moores, and studied law. Came top in her first year. She was halfway through her second year when we did London. And as obviously a lot of your listeners will know all these points I'm going to talk about, but she'd always see me around sort of Cutty Sark. She'd see me just after Tower Bridge, sometimes bomb down to Docklands, and she'd always get to near the finish. And I don't know how she did it. It showed like, impressive stamina in itself. But this time in 2002, I just saw her at the end, and she was like white as a sheet. And I thought, and like I sort of said, well, you've got to go back to the doctor because I think, sort of bad's happened. And so it was, so she saw me graduate in July. And the last photo I've actually got of her was at my graduation, and she passed in September. And so, if you ever want a role model, that is one. Not just sort of, she did well for me, but basically when she was on the canvas, she Tyson Fury'd it and got up, sort of, and obviously eventually stuff catches up with all of us. And it took a long amount of time, even like sort of in Australia, like sort of I went over there and I started running again, primarily just because I didn't think an early 30s or maybe even mid 30s at that point sort of mouthy Englishman was going to do very well playing local football, and certainly not Aussie rules. So I joined the local track club, and who'd have thought that running with people who are faster than you would make you faster as well. And eventually it turned out that I was the fastest in that area. A very famous club, actually, sort of a Western Athletics in Melbourne. And from there, you got such Aussie luminaries as Morgan Mitchell, so Aussie sort of Olympian, but also the magnificent Jack Rayner, who I can at least say that I've beaten in a few races. He took my club marathon record at London.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, exactly. I cheered him on to him taking my record, but seeing as he fleeced me for about a good 15 minutes, I don't think I'm going to try and do a tit for tat on that.
Well, talking of 15 minutes, you took 15 minutes off your marathon PB when you went out to Australia, if I'm right in saying about that. And I'm guessing, you know, the independence you got from, you know, growing up with a single, you know, parent, of course, when you were young, that would have given you a lot of encouragement about your mental capacity to dig deep in situations when you were kind of taking part in cross country, and then obviously within marathons, when anyone, you know, doing something like that will always have a lot of time to think about certain things when they're actually running for that long.
Yeah, sorry, boss. I just missed the start of that question, and your internet dropped out a bit. And so I went from taking my PB down from 15 minutes, yeah, where were we?
Yeah, no worries. Literally was saying that, you know, that when you went out to Australia, you took 50 minutes off your marathon PB, but then like the independence that you would have got from, you know, having, you know, a single parent, I guess, growing up, that would have given you mental strength and kind of capacity when, you know, at the end of the day, like anyone jogging 26 miles in a marathon, and then you know what you did out in America, you know, you've got a lot of time to think about certain stuff as well, and I'm guessing that kind of gave you the mental capacity to control that kind of that you know, determination.
Yeah, I hope so. I think, like I said, if you set somebody an example that they can achieve things, you're much more likely to be able to achieve that. And so I'm not one of these people who necessarily think, oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. Like I said, even though she disputes it, like I said, my wife, Nadine, I still believe is the only person that continually thought that I was going to be able to do the whole Gump Run. Like, my sort of dream long term was to run across America. And now I had, you know, sort of a formula and a route to follow. But when I actually got to the ocean in Santa Monica, for me, that was my sort of athletic ambition fulfilled. And so that's all I'd really thought of in terms of, you know, I thought of, you know, what it'd be like to go there. But, you know, I didn't want to say I'm definitely going to do this. But generally, once I've started doing something, like sort of, I don't tend to fail that much beyond just maybe not being quite good enough, you know, to do something. You know, if that's the case, then that's the case. It just is what it is. But I usually don't fail for lack of application, because that's the sort of thing you look back on. If somebody runs faster than you on a day, that's what it is. What you don't want to do is just saying, maybe if I hadn't have done A, B, or C, I'd have done that, because they're the regrets that eat away from you, you know. So, and similarly, like, you know, so go to Australia, you know, again, that's I suppose a fairly independent thing to do. And I would encourage people to take whatever great leap they need to do in their lives, because it is very intimidating, you know, whether it's changing job, moving to the other end of the country, or even abroad. But, you know, if it feels right, do it. And when you do it, make sure you do the best job you can.
Inspirations going across to America now, going to talk about the inspirations for the Forrest Run. You know, Nick Baldock, that's the guy that that was the book that I'm writing. And then you got the inspiration for the Forrest Gump Run from that, I presume. And I'm guessing, like, when you started, were there many people who told you, not that you couldn't do it, but said, you know, that it's a tough challenge, and that, you know, you're going to have to be pretty strong mentally and physically to do it?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily he gave me the idea to do the Forrest Gump Run, but he definitely gave me the idea to, you know, like, follow in his footsteps to a degree. Now, his book, which I think is still available from his website, it's just a great read, you know, and it just conjured up these fantastic images of America that I wanted to see myself. Now, of course, anybody who does a bit of running, especially long running, and if you mention running in America long distance, people are often going to throw that Forrest Gump line at you. So when I emailed him, the headline of the email was Forrest Gump 2. But at this point, I didn't have any idea or even designs on recreating Forrest's whole run. I wanted to go from Long Beach, California to Long Beach, New York. And I was going to call it the Long Run Home, in a massive feat of inventive naming. And it was only when you start looking at the route and stuff and you think about it, you think, oh, I wonder what route Forrest did go. And then there were a few sort of schematics online, but there was one of them that seemed to have been really well researched, and they came up with a figure of 15,248 miles. And I've seen one estimate which was higher, but in my opinion, geographically inaccurate, and another one which was 13,889. Which at one point on the run, when the wheels were coming off, seemed like a very attractive proposition to go down to the lower one.
Yeah.
But that sort of 15,248 was the goal for me. And then of course you tell people what you're doing. First of all, you just say you're running across America, and then people often struggle to comprehend that and just were wondering what you were running across America in. Like, was it a Chevy? Was it a Mustang? And then you're like, no, I'm just running. And certainly in terms of sponsors, I don't think anybody believed I was going to do it, because I got like sort of the pretty much the sum. I got absolutely zero before I set off, and I think I got like
nothing at all. There wasn't even one sponsor who can have put
not a single button.
Wow.
Even after I'd run across America once, this is on the America side of things. I sent 100. So I'm going to get some glossy brochures made, and did it with, to be fair, very amateur, like sort of PowerPoint skills myself. Sent it off to all these companies in America. I got 3 replies back out of 100 that I sent, and only one of them you could sense had even read it. And so sponsorship just wasn't a thing. Like, a friend of mine eventually managed to get me a very welcome £1,000 from the company that they work for, and so. But when it came to sponsorship from companies, anyway, that was that.
Is there an element of proving people wrong then, in that sense, that, your friends and family, I'm guessing, would have said, just go for it, Rob, you can do it, we believe in you. And yet, when it came down to the realities of the logistics of money, then
not really, because I wasn't bitter about the money side of things. I didn't feel anybody owed me anything, and so it was purely a case of it just would have made life easier, because you've got the constant physical worry. Am I going to get injured? Am I going to get hit by a car? Am I going to freeze to death or cook? And then you got the mental sort of side of things, doing the same thing every day. Life's going on around you. So the financial thing, which is the biggest overall stress, because I seem to deal with the physical side of things. So the financial thing was the killer. And, I devote a lot of my time to sort of thinking, how I could get some, because I'd run across America once. I'd run across America sort of twice before I was pretty much broke. And I realized that if I stopped at that point, it was just going to be a big run. Well done. I'd have still been proud of it, but it wasn't the Gump Run now. And of course, people had an idea what I was going to do. And because I had 2 major goals, they asked Forrest, why were you running? And he said he just felt like it. Well, I did, but I was also running, as they asked him in the film, for women's rights, the homeless, the environment, animals, and world peace. And they're my 2 charities, the World Wildlife Fund and Peace Direct. And if I didn't get to the end, then it wouldn't be a thing, for them. And so as a result, I just had to make sure that I was, carrying on.
Did the money side, did that kind of affect you kind of with the route? Did you have to raise any money to actually run, or was it just figuring out that, did you have like a tent to sleep overnight in places, or was it?
Yeah, well, when we were in Australia, like sort of my girlfriend at the time and like now wife, and I sort of we saved, and we were basically saving money to like get a deposit on a house. And so we knew we had enough money to start and to get over to the other side of America. And we took a financial gamble, because we knew that spending money on motels or hiring an RV was never going to work, because you're just losing that money. So we gambled on buying a camper van that we could hopefully sell at the end. And so, barring the first couple of weeks, sort of, we went across America to Santa Monica and then back as far as Tennessee. And that, when we realized that the rate of money that we were going through just wasn't practical to continue like that. And so that's when I went out on my own. we'd prepared for this anyway because I had a 3-wheeled stroller that I call Pram Solo.
Wow, that's amazing.
I was starting to look like Chewbacca now. I'd actually bought that in Australia. When I said I didn't have the Forrest Gump run like concrete, I was thinking about running across Australia at one point, but then I ended up coming back. And so off I set with Pram Solo, and I would camp in some people's yards. I would get the cheapest motel in town, as long as it has, like, to quote my mum, when theory on hotels, as long as it's got clean sheets and a lock on the door, she doesn't care. And so off I went. Got to Maine, got back as far. I had like a month to go until my flight home happened, because not being American, I had to go back every now and again to sort of touch base with nationality and refresh my visa. And so I had a month to go because I was a bit ahead of schedule, and got as far as Chicago on the way back before I came home. And a little while after that, Nadine came back out to join me, and we took the RV up from Cookeville in Tennessee, where we'd left it, very close to the scene of the Barclay. and so we headed up to Minneapolis, and then we got as far as San Francisco. And it was on that upper leg where basically the money was completely gone. And it had sort of one of the charities was saying, hey, we can do some subsistence for you. And I said, I don't want that, because, I know it's going to have the potential to get us to the end, and we might make what we get back. But there's that sort of backlash about sort of, people getting money to do adventures. And I said, we've got to just make this sort of fly on my own. But of course, people in the street would, sort of say hello to me and give me $20 to get by, and
that's pretty cool to hear that. So you actually have people helping you along the way then?
Yeah, mate, there's no way I could have got to the end without it. From when I was in Tennessee until I got to Maine, I think I went to a cash machine twice, but I was just, my responsibility to anybody who gave me money was to spend that as frugally as possible. So you wouldn't catch me in a nice hotel. I would literally just look at the biggest dive that didn't have bed bugs mentioned in the review and stay there. And just eat whatever I could, So friends were saying, we should be able to donate to you. And eventually sort of, I did do a Just Giving sort of page, which probably in the end came up with about probably about a fifth of the money that I would have spent on the trip and stuff. But the rest of it.
How much was that overall?
So I think it was about sort of £8,000. We spent about 35 of our own money, and I probably got about sort of 2 or 3 from people on the way as well. So all in all, it was a 50 grand expedition.
And this was all on the Forrest Gump run.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of it was amazing how quickly sort of you get through money at the start, and then at the end, when you realize and you're operating on a complete shoestring, how much you can eke that out.